Among the best sources for information about the slave days in the South is the federal government. The federal government has a trove of data suggesting that life in the South as a black slave is or was not as bad as the Democrats in Tennessee would like you to think. And in fact, the political establishment, the intelligentsia of our country would like you to think. The federal government source, as a source, I think is important. And the source is one that you need to know something about. If you care at all about the South, if you care at all about the souls of hundreds of people who gave interviews to reporters, to writers in the late 1930s, as part of the U.S. government's employment, this jobs program for writers and editors like me, right? If I were living then, I would probably have been out of work in the recession and would have jumped at the chance to be hired by the good people in Washington and gotten on the payroll and done interviews with former black slaves in the South. And this was a writer's project, as I say, and much of it, well, I think the whole archive of 20 volumes or so is online today, and you can read the stories taken with all the vernacular taken down, and the files are typewriters. You could tell they're typewriters. Sometimes they're mistakes that are part of the presentation, and you find out about the slave life of the South. It's called the Slave Narratives from the Federal Writers Project, 1936 to 1938. Just Google that, the Slave Narratives Federal Writers Project, or something of that kind, and you will come up with the whole trove of data. Again, federal data suggesting, among the following things of special note, that there was great affinity among or between blacks and whites, that there was strong familial bonds between slaves and their white masters, that while there were acts of violence, there were whippings, there were the sale of people out of away from family, that did happen. These kinds of instances were extremely rare. And you find also that the black slaves who survived to the 1930s to speak to these young reporters and editors had many of them a Christian upbringing. They were introduced to the gospel as slaves. Now, there is a controversy today about this question, and it took place in Nashville. You can read about it from Andy Scher, the writer, the reporter for the Chattanooga Time-Free Press in Nashville, who is bringing this to light. And it is about a bill introduced by a conservative politician, Mr. Kelsey. I've forgotten his first name. And he is responding. He withdrew a measure to have established as an accrediting organization for church-related schools a group called the Association of Classical and Christian Schools. It's based in Moscow, Idaho, and it is connected with the Reformed Church. We might say with the best wing, the most vigorous and intelligent wing of Christianity in Protestantism. That would be the Reformed camp. Not Presbyterians exactly, but they're Reformed in many perspectives. And yeah, here it is, Senator Brian Kelsey of West Tennessee, Germantown. And the measure would have added this Association of Classical and Christian Schools to the body that allows for accreditation. And that would include, I think, private schools. I believe that might include home education as well. So if you were a homeschool dad with your 5 to 15 children, you could go to the ACCS, the Association of Classical and Christian Schools, and be recorded there as a school, right? Because that's what homeschoolers do. They are their own school systems. I'm Principal Tulis in my homeschool. I have 4 children, one still at home. Now, the fire against this group came from the Democratic Party chair, according to Andy Scher's reporting, Mary Mancini, and she charges Doug Wilson, who is a notable man in this group, a lecturer, a writer, and I have several of his books. I'm trying to find them. I have several of his books. Have read them and enjoyed them, and even took part for a time in a theological error that Doug made, and I didn't quite see the error for some time until I read two other books to point them out to me. So I've seen this man from both sides of highly favoring his work, and then another which looks at askance for sort of, might say, technical reasons at some of his ideas. But he's a very fine writer and very articulate man, a great speaker. And he's a man who, with Steve Wilkins, another Reformed minister, put out some years ago in 1996 a small volume called Southern Slavery as It Was. It's a monograph, and it has essentially a deep discussion about the slave question. And it is a defense of the South. It is a defense of Christian culture in the South, and it has a revisionist view. And I say revisionist, what I mean is, I'd say probably an accurate view, but I call it revisionist because that perspective is challenging the establishment paradigm that says slavery was always evil, always bad, had nothing good, brought nothing good to the black man who had been enslaved, who'd been kidnapped from Africa, very often by Muslims, sold to traders, and if they survived the dark passage on the Atlantic, were sold in New England. Right, the slave trade in this country began in New England, and in fact, New England was the last part of the country to have the abolition of slavery. It was abolished first in the South, and only after the war were the slaves in Yankee world freed. I think General Grant, when he was as president, finally relinquished his last slaves because, well, they were good people and good help was hard to find. I recall being his explanation of why he kept them so long. So the story out of Nashville is over this question, and the best source we have is the federal government. The best source we have for, you might say, defending the analysis of these two Christian ministers, Steve Wilkins and Doug Wilson, is the federal government itself and the Library of Congress, which has made these narratives available. Now, what I did this morning with great delight was go back into them and look up Nashville. I entered the search term Nashville, and what that did was bring, I think, 26 different reports in courier type. Right here, they're in courier type. If you watch me here on YouTube, which I suggest you do if you are not driving or not involved in your work, look at your screen just for a second on YouTube and see the printout. This has a federal number at the top. For example, the story of Narcissus Young, a woman from Rear Street, First Street number in Nashville, an interview, and the interview number is 410021. Okay, so it's a federal number. This is official. And it came, it's printed, it's a photocopy from the young writer who got the interview from Mrs. Young and put it into the archive. And here it is. We have, I think, the original, full of typos. I mean, there are many grammatical mistakes that these uneducated people make in their speech. But apart from that, there are typos. You can see words crossed out. And sometimes letters don't quite line up with the other letters as manual typewriters are wont to do sometimes. You raise the carriage for a capital, and the capital letter that you get is lower or higher than the line is supposed to be on, and so you have this real treasure. So we have I want to suggest this, that the federal government of our country is providing evidence to support the Kelsey bill that would make the Association of Classical and Christian Schools a valid and reasonable party to establish homeschools and church-related schools in Tennessee. But here's the quote. You need to hear Mary Mancini's violent upbraiding of this writer and his work. She says that Wilson has espoused the most imaginable, and I think Andy meant to write unimaginable, or probably that's what she said. So let's just change what he wrote. He wrote imaginable, but let's have her say, Wilson has espoused the most unimaginable, defending slavery, proposing to exile people who are gay and lesbian, and killing people for infidelities. So she's very upset that in the law of God, in the Bible, in the script, the holy writ of Scripture, that marital infidelity, in other words, adultery, is a capital offense, and that is something that is true today. The Scriptures teach the same today. The Lord Jesus did not obviate that law, did not make that law go away, though, of course, the arrival of Christ and the resurrection obviated or made no longer valid the ceremonial law of ancient Israel. But you want to ask me about the parable, or the encounter of Jesus with the woman caught in adultery. Well, okay, do I have to deal with that now? Okay, well, let a word on that. That passage is often used to say that the capital punishment for adultery has been obviated or nullified by Christ's arrival and the resurrection. Well, no, it didn't. He was there with her accusers, right? The accusers, in true equity and true justice, the accusers cannot accuse someone of a crime of which they themselves are guilty. They can't do that. And so what he did when he said, "Who among you is not guilty of this? Cast the first stone." He was saying that yes, if there's an innocent party, a party with clean hands, right, a party meeting the clean hands requirements of the law, can accuse her, and there is more than one of such parties. Well, then we have a capital case, and she can be tried, and if found guilty, executed. The Lord Jesus did not overturn that law. He had no authority to do that. Capital punishment was at that time required for adultery, and he was there to enforce that law. He was there to enforce that law by saying, okay, if she's guilty, she can be stoned to death by execution, but she has to be properly accused. Who is her accuser? Well, why did all these accusers go away? Well, because they were all guilty of a capital offense. They were guilty of adultery, and so no one was there to accuse her. And the Lord Jesus, he was not a magistrate. He looked at her and said, well, your accusers have gone. There's no one here to accuse you, and I forgive your sins. He forgave the sin of adultery in her, and we are to understand that she understood who he was and that he did have the authority of God to forgive her sins. Again, though, but the Lord Jesus did not go away the capital punishment requirement for adultery in Christianity. Christianity defends marriage, right? Marriage has a high view in Christianity, so high that if you violate God's law and offend him by committing adultery, well, your life is forfeit on the earth if there is sufficient proof. And of course, the proof requirement is similar to that which we have before Judge Greenholz here in Hamilton County. If the proof can be circumstantial, but it has to be strong. Proof has to be personal, personal witness, eyewitness testimony. These are the elements of proof that are brought before his tribunal when he judges a criminal case in Hamilton County. And so okay, so the question here is Mary Mancini, the Democratic Party chair, as she's called a chair, is she right about Christianity? Well, no, she's not right about Christianity, and she says exiling people who are gay and lesbian. Well, I'll just let that one go for now. But she's misrepresenting Christianity, and she's making a slander out of Christianity, taking the edicts in God's commandments and saying, how could we possibly accept anybody, a bill or a motion from anybody who believes things like that, right? Who actually believes that the Ten Commandments are true, and that you can only have one God, and that His law binds all people, and that there is such a thing as lawless killing. Well, what does Mary Mancini say about the killing of baby black girls? I wonder what she says about that. She is perfectly happy that baby black girls in the several abortion clinics in Tennessee are destroyed outright. She's more in favor of injury to black people than Reverend Wilson, whom she excoriates with great bitterness, great indignation. And of course, now we have the Southern Poverty Law Center getting into this story as well, saying that the booklet Southern Slavery, which I highly recommend. In fact, I told Jeanette, my wife, that I made an extra printout of it this morning. I said, we need to make sure that we read this as part of our lessons, because it's a very good little volume and has a lot of value to say. There are. Well, you want to ask me about my sources? Well, I've got several sources to mention. One is a great book called Defense of Virginia in the South. and it's by Sprinkle Publications, which I read this book in Switzerland, of all places. When I was there, my mentor, Jean-Marc Berthoud, with whom I learned a great deal of French, said, you need to read this book about your country, right, the South. And so I did, and it opened up my eyes. But countering, just so you know, countering R.L. Dabney, we have Gary North, and I'm holding one of his magnificent volumes here in front of my YouTube monitor. This one is Tools of Dominion, the Case Laws of Exodus. It's a detailed economic study of God's law with a great deal of free market economics therein. And I brought it today because I thought that I would find the essay in the back where he just lambastes the whole view within Christendom that doesn't join in with Mary Mancini and condemn slavery per se and make slavery an evil per se. Well, the question is slavery per se evil? Is it evil per se? Is it wrong to be a slave? Is it wrong to have a slave? And the answer is no. It's not a sin to be a slave owner. And the people in the South who owned slaves were not sinners per se. Now, we often hear it said that slavery was an institution attended with many evils. And I think that's a proper way of describing it. It's not evil in itself, but it is attended with evils. And I want to look at some of what those evils are. But the question I think we need to go back to is, what does our chief source say? What does the federal government say about slavery? And we have many interviews, and I gave time today, sort of arbitrarily, to four that I picked out kind of early in the lineup. One was of a black woman named Narcissus Young, who joined the Primitive Baptist Church while young and been there ever since. Okay, this is how it's written to capture the cadence of black speech. Another one is of a poet, Joseph Leonidas de Star. It's 4 pages long, out of Knoxville, and he says, poetry is nothing but truth anyway, and it's truth what sets us free, and that makes us a freeborn citizen both ways and every way. I were born free. I were always happy natured, and I expect to die that way. One of my poems is named Be Satisfied, and I say in it that if a man got something to eat and teeth to bite, he should be satisfied. You can't take your goods with you. Old man Rockefeller, when he died here a while back, went away from here without his hat and shoes. Don't you just love the way he put that? He went without his hat and shoes. That's the way it's going to be with us all, no matter what our color is. Now, that's a black man, a poet. Joseph Leonidas de Star, out of Knoxville. He lived at 133 Quebec Place in Knoxville. Now, I've got several more of these, and I'm going to draw out the delightful tidbits from this, and I want to suggest to you that Doug Wilson is right, that the controversy in Nashville that Andy Scher is writing about this morning in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press is wonderful in a way, because it highlights for our benefit what actually happened, and we can go to our most reliable source, the federal government. We always want to attribute all the good things we can to the federal government, and the federal government effectively, by its archive, is saying that about more than 80% of former black slaves had very good things to say about their former masters. But we'll also hear about a whipping. We'll also hear about violence. We'll also hear about a master who didn't let his people sing the gospel songs or pray as they trotted up and down in the fields. But those things are true. There were instances of evil, and the courts. There was a book that a couple of Unitarian sisters, wives, I think, of Unitarian ministers, wrote a very famous book. You can still get it. It's called Slavery as It Was, or Slavery as It Is, rather. And it was based on reports out of the Southern newspapers that these two women, to which these two women subscribed, to find out how evil slavery was. And what they have in their book, a very famous book, again, which condemns and damns the South, what they have in their book is all the court cases where black men are the victims of white abuse. Well, think about that for a second. If you're being accused for abuse and torture, or slapping, abusing a slave, and you're being charged for it, doesn't that say something about the culture of the South, that you couldn't get away with abusing, torturing, injuring a black man or woman he did have rights. He had his rights. What about the harem? Were Southern taskmasters and owners likely to make their more attractive female slaves their whores and their mistresses? It did happen, but no, that was very rare. Think of it. If you run a plantation, would it not be better to go and have into town and have a mistress rather than go to the cabins out beyond the trees where your people are and make love to a black teenage woman? Well, no, that is not going to work. You're going to have terrible morale. You're going to have a killing at some point, and you've lost a lot of respect, and there are going to be rumors all over the place about your shenanigans. That rarely happened. This is David Tulis.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy, breezy, and colder start to your Thursday. We'll see a few sprinkles and mountain flurries for a little while. Highs only to the lower to middle 40s. Tonight, some lingering clouds, lows 30 to 32. Friday, more sunshine returns. A nicer day, highs near 50. Warmer with more sunshine for the weekend. Ocuvite is a vitamin made just for your eyes from the eye care experts at Bosch & Loam with vital eye nutrients that help protect your eye health from the inside. Remember your eyes with Ocuvite. And I'm Swargene 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Are you prepared? Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have the skills and mindset to survive a disaster? Now is the time to come to P5 Preparedness. We offer preparedness classes, supplies, and over 30 years of combined knowledge. P5 Preparedness, located on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. Look for the big Army truck. Call us at 423-602-2175. Do not wait. You need to get prepared today. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Get the skills and supplies you need or die waiting for help. P5 Preparedness.
Hello, I'm Mike Little, candidate for criminal court judge with 25 years of criminal court experience, which makes me the most qualified candidate. The experience I have gained from handling over 4,000 cases in state and federal court has equipped me with the ability to be fair, impartial, and independent. As your next criminal court judge, I will focus on keeping Hamilton County safe. I view this position as a public service and will strive to improve the daily operations of the court. I humbly ask for your trust and vote in the March 1st Republican primary.
Paid for by the committee to elect Mike Little. Barry Abbott, Treasurer.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business? Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Call me now, 875-5621.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Tonight's the final GOP debate before Super Tuesday.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz is hoping to use this Houston homecoming as a springboard, a strong debate leading to a string of successes next week.
Super Tuesday, I believe, will be the single most important day of this entire presidential election.
Cruz is likely to face attacks from delegate-leading frontrunner Donald Trump, who has been painting Cruz as a liar.
Fox Radio's Jared Halpern. Islamic State supporters allegedly making threats against social media giants for combating terrorism on their internet platforms.
This 25-minute propaganda video includes pictures of Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter founder Jack Dorsey covered by bullet holes.
Fox's Garrett Tenney. Members of the Virginia National Guard on active duty after powerful storms which killed 4. And first-time jobless claims for last week up 10,000 to 272,000.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. The man being sought after in a rape case in Nashville was arrested on Wednesday afternoon in Chattanooga following an extensive high-speed freeway chase down I-75, which ended in multiple wrecks at the East Brainerd Road exit. One Tennessee Highway Patrol officer was injured in that wreck with minor injuries. Charged was 20-year-old Cardarius DeMonte Caldwell, who police say sexually assaulted a woman from Rutherford County whom he met on Facebook. Police say he held a gun to her at her house on Cherry Street while assaulting her. They also say he stole a car from a gas station and sped off before he was stopped at the East Brainerd Road exit many miles later. Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies say that there was a shooting that happened on Highwater Road in Soddy Daisy. When deputies got there, they did find one person with a gunshot wound. The deputies are still investigating further. The scene is secure as of now. To keep a leg up on the weather, make sure you get the Bloom Sky app for your smartphone. Search for Chattanooga, and you'll get the live view from us here at Hot News Talk Radio. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on at Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Opening on March 4 at Hunter Museum, A Painter's Hand, the works of Adolf Gottlieb. I'm showing my YouTube viewer one of his major works. It's called American, and I'm going to try to describe it for you so you'll see what he's going for. Okay, well, it's three blotches of paint. One on the left is purple. One in sort of middle higher is red, and then one on the right is yellow. And then there is a series of three blotches that look like letters, but they're not really letters. They are incomprehensible gyrations of thought or hand, one or the other. And then also there are a few stray little blotches here and there on a very light, slightly yellow background, which I guess is the border, not the border, but the plane upon which this major work is produced. We read in huntermuseum.org's magazine that comes in the mail. It's a very attractive publication that off of Tin Bluff View. And there's the cover, Art View, the spring 2000 issue of Hunter Museum of American Art. Here, of course, on the back you'll see the mailing address, and then also notice the exterior view from the glass bridge, looking toward the more modern and more attractive part of that structure. The museum is a kind of a combination of submarine that has been raised out of the water and perched on the edge of a cliff next to a very fine colonial-looking old style building of great grace, great candor, great Southern charm, with the same kind of charm that we'd find in a refined woman speaking Central Alabamian dialect. Well, the description of Adolf Gottlieb's work is this in part. That it says that his artistic career was marked by a continual search for originality, independence, and a desire to change the art of his era. Okay, so he wants to change the art of his era, of his time, right? The limitations, the constraints of convention that were oppressive to Adolf Gottlieb. He said in 1956, Gottlieb reduced the imagery in his paintings to basic forms. Okay, he's going back to the core, right? The core of art are basic forms, developing what are now termed his burst paintings. I think what we're looking at here in the painting called American, featured in the magazine, is one of those. Always interested in experimentation, he created these paintings by. Now here we're gonna have to step back and just respect the finest quality, the highest forms of gift. He created these paintings by pouring paint onto a flat canvas resting on sawhorses, and then used a squeegee, push broom, or other non-traditional tools, along with brushes, right, the old standby legacy instrument, to apply the paint. Much of the exhibition explores monotypes created within the last 9 months of the author's life. The event is March the 4th through June the 5th. He used small bits of cardboard, palette knives, and his fingers to manipulate the paints and inks on the plate. In some cases, he added to or altered a work after it had been run through the press. In all, he found working on monotypes to be a return to the freedom and technical experimentation that he prized. Well, again, we are simpletons. We are the unrefined. We are the proletariat here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And I do welcome you. Thank you for giving us a couple of minutes of your time. We proles, right? We taxpayers, we people in commerce is what we are at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The great unwashed. The ones who look patiently and with reverence to the good people in Washington and in Nashville. My name is David Tulis, and we cover local economy and the free market here. And I'm the editor of a website that you should go to. Okay. Well, I say that because you very probably are a man who matters too. If you listen to my show, you'll tend to be a man who matters, or if not actually one who matters, you want to be one who matters. And that is why you come here in hopes that in a few minutes that you've got with me, that I can just encourage you with some bit of fodder, right? Some material for the mind, maybe for the soul, that will let you be more productive, more useful, and have a greater effect in your sphere of influence, right? In the area of your sovereignty, if you will. I say that I use the word sovereignty, of course, very guardedly, but I do so because one of my favorite authors does that. The Dutch statesman Abraham Kuyper, whom I like to read his only volume in English, right? I'll try to read that. Our argument is love your neighbor, and by local, near is better than far. Small is better than big, simple than complex, and personal beats corporate. And then the fifth point, this is footnote number 2 now, physical is better than abstract. I've got to put my glasses on to see that. It's in very small type. But that's where the fleas fight in the footnotes with scimitar and javelin, right? The Crusaders and the Moors combating it out there in the footnotes. And that's what we're all about. I think that Adolf Gottlieb's work might have some value, but got to remember where he's coming from. He's coming from the modernist revolutionary framework. And there, what matters is not an objective truth. There's no objective truth with a man like that, with a whole unwashed carabinieri type people who were not carabinieri. That's Italian for police officer. The whole Buonarroti types, right? Those the Italian revolutionaries. These are the revolutionaries who got a lot of their energy in the 1840s. And of course, during the French Revolution. But what they say is there is no objective standard for beauty. Beauty is private. Beauty is subjective. And his goal as an artist is not to tell you something that's true or to point to God, who is truth, right? That's not what he cares about at all. And many painters who are heathen disagree with him, right? They believe that beauty is external. Beauty is a standard outside of man, and that's the Christian. The Christian argument makes that very same statement, that beauty is external. It is not private, and sorry, and so we have a man whose argument is in every painting that there is no truth, and that I'm going to shock you by declaring that this is beauty and this. The 3 dots and the 3 great blotches that look like letters but are not, that at Hunter Museum is an important piece of work, and you need to be changed by it. I am a change agent, and my imagery is my poetry, and by this, I get into the sinews of your being and change you. I change you forever. Once you've seen this painting, you are a new man. You have been saved. You have a kind of visual salvation. For as long as you look at this painting, there is truth. And you and I are one. We are one through the image. It contains my id, okay? And we connect with my id through this work. That there's something of what I'm suggesting here, and with every modern artist who denies that there is objective truth. Well, my name is David Tulis. We are brought to you by Superior Air Systems in the big orange van, bringing you relief on cold days when your heater doesn't work, bringing you relief on the warm days when you need to have that air condition checked instantly because your wife is looking at you and she's saying, can you do something about this, please? Superior Air Systems, 886-6602, 886-6602, Superior Air Systems here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. Brought to you also by P5 Preparedness, the preparedness show. Every Thursday we have in the studio Duke Nukem at 11, and it's the Patriot Prepper Show. And I'll let you know in a minute what he's in the next hour, what he's going to be talking about. He hasn't shown up yet to take his place at the mic. But P5 Preparedness on East Brainerd Road, and many supplies, water filters, camo backpacks, dried food, knives, axes. There is how to grow without earth. There's a hydroponics facility there as well at P5 Preparedness. And you'll have to ask Duke what P5 means. It does mean something of great value. Also brought to you by Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Jürgen Mutz, the man who will help you make more of your cash flow. Your cash flow diverts into trade dollars. This is a B2B business, and you save on your green rectangles because you're dickering and trafficking in Trade Bank of Chattanooga dollars by debit card. There's a little bit of a fee that's attached with that service, but it is an alternative currency, you might say, an alternative trading barter-oriented economy here in Chattanooga. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call Jürgen, ask him today. Call him today and say, Jürgen, what do you have for me? What can I do for you? And what can you do for me? And again, 877-2202, 877-2202. 002. I have an interest in going to the federal government for my sources. The federal government, of course, always tells the truth. Even on the question of slavery in the South is not and was not an unmitigated evil. Slavery by itself is not a violation of God's law. Read the scriptures. Slaves were not told to revolt. Slave owners were not told to remit their slaves, to free their slaves. That would come later. The reason slavery is wrong is because it's not about people at liberty. And people at liberty are the most productive and are most likely to find their true value before God and before their fellow man. That's why slavery is not good. Any slavery is bad because liberty is not there, right? It's bad because there's no liberty, right? So liberty, if you're against slavery, like Mary Mancini, the Democratic Party chair in Tennessee, you should be for liberty. Now, liberty is not that which is mentioned in the French Revolutionary claims of liberté, égalité, fraternité, which is to say fraternity, brotherhood, liberty, and equality. That is the egalitarian mathematical formula. All right, the French Revolution was mathematics applied to people, and it wasn't very good at cleaning up the blood which it left on the church floors there in Paris and around France. Liberty is important, and slavery is bad because it doesn't let people reach their full potential before God, and it doesn't let them exercise their duty to other men, right? To use what they have in the service of other men. The service is limited to the master, right? And that's why employment really is a great limitation, because when you're employed, you are the servant of the master. Yes, that's true. Go to Black's Law Dictionary, go to any dictionary, and you'll find that employment is the master-servant relationship. We just have a new form for it and some new words applied to it, but the relationship is identical with that of chattel slavery in the Old South. Well, the controversy in Nashville, you'll want to read Nooganomics.com to find out more about that. But there were evils in black slavery, and here I want to give you a taste of some of what it was like in the negative. Okay, slavery had benefits for blacks. It had benefits for whites. There was much amity, much Christian mercy and grace among slaves and masters and whites. There were many freed blacks. A quarter of freed blacks owned their own black slaves, by the way. Here is a quote from Millie Simpkins called Black Mamie from Nashville. She was 109 years old when she gave an interview to the Good People and their project, which gave us the federal record about slavery. And the record is found online. It's famous record. And if you don't know anything about it, you should spend some time there. It's Born in Slavery, Slave Narratives from the Federal Writers Project, 1936 to 1938. A government dole for writers and editors like me, right? This is David Tulis, by the way, the editor of Nooganomics.com. Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. Mamie, the black Mamie, Millie Simpkins says this. She says, the slave yard was on Cedar Street, and Mr. Chandler would bid the slaves off, but before they started bidding, you had to take all of your clothes off and roll down the hill so they could see that you didn't have no broken bones or sores on you. I wouldn't take mine off, she said. If nobody bid on you, you was took to the slave market and sold. I was sold there. A bunch of them was sent to Mississippi, and they had their ankles fastened together, and they had to walk whilst the traders read. That's Millie Simpkins, 109 years old, and this is record number 410007. This is the federal government's record of the evils of slavery. She also says when they got ready to whip them, they'd put them down on a pit without any clothes and stand back with the bullwhip and then cut the blood out. I remember the people would run away and hide out. And she says also that the white folks that she knew didn't allow prayer. The white folks didn't want us to learn nothing. And if a slave picked up a little piece of papa, they would yell, "Put that down, you want to get in our business?" In other words, if you were a literate black and you had found a piece of paper with some writing on it, it was dangerous to the white man because you want to get in our business. In other words, if you can read, you are equal with us. And of course, that's why we have illiteracy today as public policy in Tennessee, because we don't want people to be to know their business, right? If we have public schools, we won't know their business, right? That's how that works. She goes on to say, the white folks wouldn't let the slaves pray if they got to pray. Hit was whilst walking behind the plow. White folks would whoop the slaves if they heard them sing or pray. And that's a black woman's testimony. She's 109 years old, speaking to a federal journalist as part of the Slave Narratives Federal Writers Project in 1936 to 1938. And she was in Nashville. There's another black woman. Of course, women tend to outlive men. Narcissus Young from Nashville. And she gives an interview. She says, she talks about what she did. She's a 96-year-old, born in slavery, and my master was Isham Lamb, and my missus was Martha Lamb. She says, my missus learned me to sew, weave, and spin. I also helped her cook and work in the house. After I got bigger, I went to church with my white folks and had to sit with other slaves in that part of the church where nobody but slaves would be allowed. In slavery, I get no money for working, but I don't steal, as my white folks sure give me and the other slaves plenty good things to eat. Clothes good enough for anybody, candy, and we went to parties and other places, and what else could I want? She says, I joined the Primitive Baptist Church while young and been there ever since. And she goes on to talk about her life. There's also one of the records. This is record number 410023, 4 pages from a very articulate poet, Joseph Leonidas Starr, who lived in Knoxville. And he has wonderful things to say about poetry. And he says, Lee Starr is born a free man, but of course, things being as they were both, my mother and father were slaves. That is, for a few years, they lived in Greenville, Tennessee. My mother, Maria Guess, was freed before the emancipation by the good words of her young white mistress, who told me all when she was about to die. She wanted them to set Maria free because she didn't want her little playmate to be nobody else's slave. They was playmates, you see. My mother was 11 years old when she was freed. And he goes on to talk about his life and other things. And many of this narrator goes on to say, many of Starr's poems have been published in the local and state papers. He keeps a record of deaths of all citizens and has done so for 60 years. He called the one which records murders and hangings his doomsday book, and coached in it, he claims, is an accurate date, a record of all such events of importance in his lifetime. His records are neatly inscribed in a printing form and very legible. His conversation is marked by grammatical incongruities, but he does not speak the Negro dialect. This young writer says, who worked for the federal government in the Federal Riders Project. Both my father and mother was learned in the shoemaking trade when they come to Knoxville to live, and where I was born, they had a great big shoe shop out there close to where Governor Brownlow lived. Knoxville just had 3 streets running east and west and one run north and south. I well remember when General Burnside come to Knoxville, that was enduring the siege of Knoxville. Before he marched his men out to the Battle of Fort Saunders, he stopped his soldiers band in front of our shoe shop and serenaded my mother and father. I was a little boy, and I climbed up on the porch banisters and sat there and listened to that music. And there are other things of special note. There are many in the slave narratives, many things favorable to the masters. Clara Davis of Alabama says, "Them was the good old days. How I longs to be back there with my old folks and playing with the children down by the creek. Tain't nothing like it today. No, sir. They tells me that when a person crosses that river, the Lord gives him what he wants. I done told the Lord I don't want nothing much. Only my home, white folks. I don't think that's much to ask for. I suppose he'll send me back there. I've been waiting for him to call." And this quote is, in fact, in the book that is at issue in Nashville as we speak today, Southern Slavery as It Was, a monograph by Steve Wilkins and Douglas Wilson, which cites in detail the federal slave narratives. And it quotes George Fleming of Lawrence, South Carolina. "I longed to see Marse Sam Fleming. Lord, child, that's the best white man that ever breathed the good air. I still goes to see where he buried. Every time I gets a chance to venture toward Lawrence, as old as I is, I still draps a tear when I see his grave, for he sure was good to me and all the other people he had on the plantation." And slavery, and here's the sentence that Mary Mancini, the Democrat in Nashville, is screaming about. It says, "Slavery produced in the South a genuine affection between the races that we believe we can say has never existed in any nation before the war or since. Whatever its failures, slavery produced in the South a degree of mutual affection between the races which will never be achieved through any federally funded, federally mandated efforts." This is it's important to consider other things as well about the South that are kind of the historical record. Slaves had it much better than the freed white men, and slaves in the South ate more, were better clothed than the poor whites in the North. Many refused to take the loyalty oath after the war. There's some great quotes in this volume showing that there were slaves who would not. One man refused to take, and he said why. When he was asked why he refused, his master, he said, because his master had taken the oath, he said, "Massa has no principles." And there were a group of white Virginia slave owners recorded in this book, and their slaves were asked if they would take the loyalty oath in exchange for their freedom. A free black among them stated indignantly, "I can't take no such oath. I'm a secesh Negro." A slave in the same group, when he learned that his master had refused to take the oath, proudly replied, "I can't take no oath that massa won't take." And of course, you can say, well, these people are just brainwashed, right? They're just brainwashed, and they had to say these things. They were not. They didn't have souls. They were just just sort of creatures of evolution. They just did what they were accustomed to doing. Well, I don't think that's really fair. But it is fair to say that the slave mentality of the South was kept by that race now, and we have a slave mentality today, and we find it in the willingness to be taken care of by the white man. And the black man today, in many quarters, has the same desire to be cared for, not to be free, because with freedom there's responsibility. I read several of these statements to these young writers, and black people said when slavery was over, we left, we had nothing. We had absolutely nothing. And so many of them lived with their old masters. They had a different relationship, but there was enough affection between the two races at many points, in many byways in the South, along many fields, along many edges of towns in the Southland, where after the war, the personal affinity, the personal affection between the former slave and the former master continued. And the former master, of course, bereft now of his capital, decimated in his fortunes after the war, did his best to share in the crop with his former people, and under a new relationship, under the liberties brought by the Yankees in defeating the South. after the war. Well, this is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me a couple of minutes of your time. We are brought to you by Advantage Printing, a great print shop with the blue awnings right next to Food City in Brainerd. I've got a newsletter that's going to be going there in the next day or two, homeschool newsletter. I've got some remarkable things from that publication to talk to you about.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
MLS 2239. What would you do with all that cash? Listen up, y'all. Ben Phillips here, Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. $1,200. That's how much we just put back in a Saudi Daisy family's pocket per month. All they did was pick up the phone. 805-9100. That's 805-9100. Get that quick quote now. 805-9100. HomeRateMortgage.com. MLS 2239. Do you want to achieve the American dream in 2016? Listen up, y'all. I'm Ben Phillips with Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. We just helped a police officer purchase his first home in East Brainerd. Now he's grilling and chilling on his back deck. The American dream. You could achieve it with no money down options. Why wouldn't you call? 805-9100, HomeRateMortgage.com.
Hi, I'm Sabrina with Sabrina Realty Associates. Now is a great time to sell your home. In our area, inventory is at an all-time low, which translates into higher sales prices. Call us today at 423-499-7780 to set up a free consultation and discuss our unique and aggressive marketing programs. We will provide you with a free market analysis to determine the right value of your home. Call us today at 423-499-7780 or visit our website at SabrinaRealty.com.
Our house in the middle of our street. Our house.
Need more of your tax money back faster? EJPelton.com. Save time and money now. EJPelton.com. You wouldn't want to go to a dance by yourself, so why dance with the IRS alone? EJPelton.com. Get more of your money back faster now. EJPelton.com. For you and your business. EJ Pelton Tax Resolution and E-Filing Services. You earned it. Now keep more of your money. EJPelton.com. Offices in Brainerd and Saudi. EJPelton.com.
Yeah, I'm the tax man.
He's a U.S. military veteran, 27 years of assessment experience, and a proven conservative record.
Sterling Jeton is the only candidate equipped to run the Assessor Properties Office.
You have trusted us to serve. We trust Sterling Jeton to continue serving you with integrity and a commitment to conservative principles.
I'm Claude Ramsey.
And I'm Bill Bennett.
And I'm Sterling Jeton, and I'm asking for your vote on the March 1st Republican ballot.
Paid for by friends to elect Sterling Jeton. Pam McAllister, Treasurer.
Are you prepared for severe weather? February 28th through March 5th is Severe Weather Awareness Week in Tennessee. Do you have a severe weather plan? Do you know how to protect yourself from tornadoes? And most importantly, do you have a weather alert radio? Come to P5 Preparedness and let us help you get ready for severe weather or any other emergency. P5 Preparedness is located on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. Look for the Green Army truck. Call us at 423-602-2175. You need to get prepared today. Don't wait until it's too late. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Get the skills and supplies you need to die waiting for help.
I'd probably run for president of the southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, David Tulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
That's despite the Bureau's insistence in court papers, it only wants access to this one phone this one time.
James Comey says the broader question is one for Congress and corporations, not just the courts.
This is the hardest question I've seen in government, and it's going to require negotiation and conversation.
Comey warns if it loses this fight, the public will need to come to grips with the fact that the FBI may not have all the answers it seeks. Frank?
Facebook and Twitter have taken steps to remove posts that threaten terrorist violence, and that's made them and their CEOs ISIS targets. ISIS made the threat in a new propaganda video. It features photos of Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter's Jack Dorsey targeted by bullets. The farm community of Waverly, Virginia, is coming to grips with the tornado that left it in ruins and killed 3 people. CBS's Chip Reed saw what was left of one family's home.
You can see a cinder block foundation. That is where a mobile home was before this storm hit. It is simply gone. There were 3 people in that mobile home. It was lifted up, and their bodies were found 300 yards away.
Violent weather in the South this week has claimed at least 8 lives. There's wind damage and flooding in parts of the Northeast. Heavy snow is slowing highway and air travel in the Midwest. Early today, the Coast Guard dispatched a ship to help a fishing boat that was taking on water off New York City's Far Rockaway neighborhood. But it ran into trouble of its own along the way.
The inlet water was producing 10 to 12-foot waves, and the Coast Guard vessel actually capsized as well.
Petty Officer 3rd Class Ali Flakersey says everyone on both vessels is okay. 2012 Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney believes he knows why the 2016 frontrunner hasn't released his tax returns. Romney shared his suspicions with Fox News.
Frankly, I think we have good reason to believe that there's a bombshell in Donald Trump's taxes.
Trump told CNN that's not it at all. It's just taking his CPAs a long time to get the information together.
We'll make a determination over the next couple of months. It's very complicated.
The UN is going to consider a new draft of sanctions to punish North Korea for carrying out a nuclear test and launching a ballistic missile. CBS News foreign affairs analyst Pamela Fall.
The new resolution goes further than sanctions imposed in the past, and this time has the support of China, which had been reluctant to increase pressure on North Korea.
The averages are lower in early Wall Street trading. The Dow Industrials are down about 18 points. This is CBS News.
Does the devil exist? Is there really a fallen angel named Lucifer? When you are tempted, is it really the product of an evil Satan? Russia's master of horror, Sergei Mavrodi, introduces you to Lucifer's Son, Book 1 of the Temptation Chronicles, the national bestseller in Russia. Kirkus Review calls it protracted, but deliciously creepy explorations of the macabre. Christine Morris of Forward Review says Lucifer's Son lays bare the depravity of the human heart as everyday men make bargains with the devil to obtain their desires. Follow the unrelated yet overlapping vignettes. Igor sells his soul on television and deals with the consequences. Andre struggles to survive an unforgiving forest. Lucifer's Son will fill you with fear and anxiety, and you won't be able to put it down until the terrifying conclusion. Lucifer's Son, Book 1 of the Temptation Chronicles by Sergei Mavrodi. Available in ebook or paperback at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and fine bookstores everywhere.
The 5 remaining Republican presidential candidates will be on stage tonight, deep in the heart of Texas.
With all eyes on delegate-rich Texas, tonight could be a make-or-break performance for the hometown Senator Ted Cruz. Scott Braddock is editor of the Lone Star State-based Quorum Report.
You might think Cruz would be the natural choice for some of the most conservative folks in Texas, but when you ask them to choose between him and Trump, many have to think really hard before answering.
And while Cruz performed strongly in Iowa, Trump has won 3 of 4 early voting states. The latest poll by Emerson College shows the two separated by just 1 point here. August Skamenka, CBS News, Houston.
At the Oscars on Sunday night, Lady Gaga will sing Till It Happens to You from a documentary about sexual assault on college campuses. Vice President Biden will introduce her. His office says Biden will use the platform to urge everyone to speak out against sexual assault. Frank Sedapani, CBS News.
Does the devil exist? Is there really a fallen angel named Lucifer? When you are tempted, is it really the product of an evil Satan? Russia's master of horror, Sergei Mavrodi, introduces you to Lucifer's Son, Book 1 of the Temptation Chronicles, the national bestseller in Russia. Kirkus Review calls it protracted, but deliciously creepy explorations of the macabre. Christine Morris of Forward Review says Lucifer's Son lays bare the depravity of the human heart as everyday men make bargains with the devil to obtain their desires. Follow the unrelated yet overlapping vignettes. Igor sells his soul on television and deals with the consequences. Andre struggles to survive an unforgiving forest. Lucifer's Son will fill you with fear and anxiety, and you won't be able to put it down until the terrifying conclusion. Lucifer's Son, Book 1 of the Temptation Chronicles by Sergei Mavrodi. Available in ebook or paperback at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and fine bookstores.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy, breezy, and colder start to your Thursday. We'll see a few sprinkles and mountain flurries for a little while. Highs only to the lower to middle 40s. Tonight, some lingering clouds, lows 30 to 32. Friday, more sunshine returns. A nicer day, highs near 50. Warmer with more sunshine for the weekend. Ocuvite is a vitamin made just for your eyes from the eye care experts at Bosch & Loam with vital eye nutrients that help protect your eye health from the inside. Remember your eyes with Ocuvite. And I'm Swargene 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Should schools bribe their students with gifts, with candies, with tickets, with labels, with with various things that are not really rewards for learning? The argument I want to make to you is no, that they shouldn't, and that there is a debasement of learning. There's a debasement of the whole academic program if you have false incentives. We are here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and we care about genuine incentives, real incentives in the free market. And there are many interruptions of the free market, including that one which reduces the value of book knowledge, of reading novels, of discussing academic topics, of looking into history. They're all reduced for the reward. And we find that we have devalued the human being with whom we're dealing in that exchange. Well, we are talking not about unlocking knowledge at the moment. We want to talk about unlocking doors and how it is that Steve Ruggiero from Flying Locksmith is making a living in a new venture. He is an entrepreneur. He has a story to tell about being in the insurance business and bailing out. He bailed out of insurance. He sold a business last year, and in December opened a franchise with the Flying Locksmith, which is based out of Boston. Steve, tell us about your work in insurance. What was the problem that you were facing as an owner? You were an entrepreneur. You were taking risk. You were having wages and profits in that business in the insurance field. What were the insurmountable problems that took you into the sale and installation of locks, such as the one I'm holding in my hand here?
Well, thanks for having me, David. First of all, let me don't mislead anybody. The insurance business was very good to me for 13 years. But starting about 2 years ago, things heading in the industry in a different direction.
Not a good direction.
As not a good direction for local agency owners, in my opinion. Insurance is becoming more and more of a commodity. Online purchases, centralized call centers, and removing more and more of the authority that we had as agency owners, as field underwriters out in the field.
So just briefly, Steve Ruggiero, what was the authority that agents had at the time, or that they to some extent they still have now? What do you mean authority? Talk more about that.
And for instance, so when I first started the business, we would go out and we would do home inspections to figure out if it was a proper risk for the company. And we would submit that paperwork. And they would do spot checks, let's say. They might send somebody out, a third-party vendor out behind you every fifth home that you wrote, and you didn't know where it was. Well, as the years progressed, it basically came to where they were sending somebody out behind you on each and every home. So again, it kind of removes your value out in the field. If you're going to go out there and make a call on it, and then they're going to send somebody behind you that has the final say on it, what purpose do you really serve?
Did you find yourself being overruled or overridden in your analysis?
I wouldn't say that necessarily. We had 100% success rate. If there were issues identified, you go back to the homeowner and get them fixed. But to me, it's just the fact of, you're removing, you're setting criteria that might make sense in one part of the country, and you're making that the rule all across the entire country when things are very regional.
So that's the centralization problem you saw.
Exactly.
Now, tell us about the days or maybe the months before your decision to sell your insurance business in Chattanooga. What steps led up to that decision? What were you doing as you were approaching that date?
Well, it was about 2 years in the making. And, we just felt like it was the time that, we needed to, evaluate our situation. I just turned 40 this year.
The we is whom?
Me and my wife.
Okay.
We worked the business together.
Brandy.
The
mother of your 4 children.
Right. We got 4 kids. And we saw some changes coming up with our contracts in specific. And, we just decided that right now is the right time to look at doing something new.
Well, when you said, okay, we're selling the business, tell about that, give some detail about the transaction and what you had already set in place when that transaction took place.
Well, it's kind of funny. People ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And actually, I didn't know. I've worked, mainly in the insurance industry over the past 20 years, but I've done different things and always really enjoyed what I did and usually excelled at it. And so we actually sold the agency before I decided what it was I was going to do next. And so
it's kind of risky, isn't it?
A little
risky,
scary, little scary, but we managed to land on our feet. And that's when I got connected with a local business owner with the entrepreneur source, Bruce Krebs. And, he's on talk radio and talks about doing personality assessments and trying to match people up with the right things that make sense for that area. And I thought, heck, if nothing else, I'm going to go utilize this resource and figure out what I might want to do in my next job. And after meeting with him and doing some going back and forth, he put together a few ideas that he thought would make good sense for me, my family, in this economy, in this area. And then we kind of started chipping away and making some decisions there.
Well, to which proposed jobs or which proposed franchises did you turn your back on? Or against which did you turn your back on?
Sure. Well, we were first presented with 10 different opportunities, and it was all over the board. I mean, it was things from like locksmithing to bathroom remodel, tree removal, business consulting. And at first, when I looked at the list, I thought, wow, this is all over the place. But as we went through and talked about why it might make sense for us, I saw myself being happy maybe doing any of those things. But as I mentioned, we did decide to do the flying locksmith. So we turned our back on bathroom remodels, tree removal companies, business consulting, auto detailing, and many others.
Well, why? What was the advantage in going in the direction of locksmith? You who knew nothing beforehand about locks.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I really liked about this particular business model is they took an industry that's been around for thousands of years, being locksmiths, and this business has been around since 1946 out of Boston, as you mentioned earlier. And what I liked about their business model is they have continued to stay on the cutting edge of technology and growing with technology instead of like the fear I had with the insurance business. It was going further and further away from what value I could bring to the table.
Well, we're speaking of technology, and this is David Tulis. We're chatting with Steve Ruggiero, a flying locksmith, and I'm holding in my hand a very heavy metal object that has 2 main parts and 2 handles. There are 2 panels with a door handle on each side. On the outside, the outside handle, there are 12 buttons. Tell about these buttons and why this thing is so heavy.
So this is an alarm lock product, and so Alarm Lock is the manufacturer. And it's been around for quite some time. And most folks are probably look at something like this and go, oh, well, this would be on some sort of sophisticated commercial building. But actually, this particular model right here is very popular with residents. And what you can do with this is it has a key override you can see here, but you can assign programs. And this particular one, you can put up to 3 different codes on it and assign that to people. And so this way, let's say it is on your business, for instance, and you have an employee that leaves. Instead of calling me to come out and rekey all of the keys, you could simply remove that code, and that employee no longer has access to the house. Let's say this is on your home. In that particular case, you could have it set to where If you have a housekeeper or maybe an electrician coming by at a certain time, you can give them a code that either only works during certain hours or maybe it only works once. And so once they leave the house, that code is no longer good anymore. Years ago, people would say, wow, this thing has cost thousands of dollars. But as we all know, technology moves very quickly and these things are very affordable. This particular model right here retails for around $600. And you mentioned how heavy it feels.
Why is that?
Because it has no plastic components on the inside, like you'll find on a lot of the hardware you'll purchase at your big box stores. And that makes a real big difference when you talk about longevity or somebody, maybe a bad guy trying to get into the house or your business that shouldn't be in there.
Now, my listener might say, wow, that's a $600 heavy lock that could be on the front of my house. However, my door is only a $120 door, and it's not very sturdy. Talk about the compatibility between my listener's door and a device like this. Must you change the door too to make the door as strong as the lock?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of companies offer bracings that you can purchase as packages. In fact, you can get those at the big box stores, or you can call a company like us to come out and do the install, where they'll come out and put reinforced strips that aren't even noticeable when the door is closed. But it'll reinforce your weakest points of entry, which is if somebody's trying to kick in the doors, usually the door jamb, where your locks and components are going into the frame.
What about the thinner panels that many doors have? They have 4 panels that are thinner than the main frame of the door.
Right. And these packages, you can buy as many as you need as far as the reinforcement goes, but you can get them for the door. You can get them for the frame. You can to go around your hinges on the opposite side of the door.
So, Steve, your job is not just the lock, but the door itself. Is that fair?
Correct. Yep. We say if it's on the door, we service it.
Well, there's a trend for replacing locks with digital devices, with cards and the like. Talk about that technological development. It's 2 decades old or so, I guess. And where is that industry now, and what does my listener need to know about it?
Sure. 15, 20 years ago, you only saw that sort of technology on companies maybe like Unum or TVA or Blue Cross Blue Shield. But today you're seeing it on smaller businesses. With the computer technology, I mean, you can program these things. You can open them up remotely from your business. If you've got a little video camera and you see somebody's at the door at your house, you can go ahead and free them in that way as well.
And that's done online.
Yep, it's done online. We've got wireless ones. We've got wired copies. And we've even got them now, too, where a lot of, it's not your Pentagons and stuff putting these biometrics on them, but, your local businesses can put it on to where it reads a thumbprint or a scan of your eye. This way, if somebody drops a card out in the parking lot and it's picked up by somebody else, they don't have access.
Well, investment of this kind would be maybe a couple $1,000s. Let's say you have a business with 3 doors, all 3 external doors, including a garage, maybe a dock door. And so why is that a good investment in your business? What are the dangers that you're dealing with? Crime is down by half from the 1960s and 70s. Steve Ruggiero, why spend the money? Why worry about and have such powerful, very heavy, sturdy locks and systems?
You're probably looking more of it from a long-term investment. Because if you don't have something like this that you can take care of yourself each time, again, if you have employee turnover or change in management, transferring from one store to another, you're calling us to come out there and do that. And the probably average cost for a trip to come out and rekey 3 doors and stuff, you're talking anywhere from $300 to $500. So it doesn't take too many of those trips to equal, or surpass the cost of one of these locks that you can maintain more on your own.
Superior Creek Lodge in East Ridge was a motel for people who rent by the week. And it had a pretty tough security system before it closed. I remember having to go in there. It could lock people out remotely from their rooms if they didn't pay. And so if you were late on the rent by 3 or 4 hours, you were told, okay, you've got to pay by noon, and by 4, if you hadn't made the payment, you were locked out of your room, separated from your belongings. That is the field in which you're working, right? You would do a job like Superior Creek Lodge or other dwelling lodges.
Yeah. I mean, we can handle that sort of stuff. It kind of sounds like stories where some of these auto dealers are now putting devices on there. You don't make your car payment, it kills you. It kills the power to your car. So lots of different features and functions and different ways to do this sort of stuff.
Well, what do you personally know about locks? Do you know how to fix a broken lock, Steve?
No. And that was one of the things going back to the business model for the Flying Locksmiths. They were looking for business owners that could manage personnel, HR, handle marketing, manage the P&L, that sort of stuff.
What is P&L?
profit and losses for the businesses. And, especially in Tennessee, locksmithing is highly regulated. In fact, it may surprise some people. We're one of the most highly regulated states in the entire country.
Well, talk about that. Why is that? And what are the effects of that on your business?
Well, it's usually when something like that comes along, it's usually because something bad happened to somebody within the state. And a number of years ago, there was a group that was going around of thieves, and they were portraying themselves as locksmiths. And so they would go out to homes and businesses, change the locks, and then they would come back later and they would steal from them. I believe the group started in Florida. It skipped Georgia, hit Tennessee, Texas, California. So you'll find those states that have been victims of that sort of practice have usually put law into practice to kind of keep that sort of stuff from happening again.
Well, say briefly, Steve Ruggiero of Flying Locksmith, what the state's requirement is on you as the owner. What do you have to post a bond? How much is the license? Do you have to take a class? And so on.
Yeah, it was difficult. It's kind of a double-edged sword for us. It was very difficult for us to get into the business, but the nice thing is that kind of worms out who your competition, who can get into it later. One of the things that we had one of the things we had to do, we actually have to be licensed as a firm or company. But in order to be licensed as a firm or company, you actually have to have what they call a qualifier already on your staff.
That is to say, the man who does the technical work.
That is a licensed locksmith. And in Tennessee, that person must have had their Tennessee locksmith license prior to you forming your company. So it's not like you can decide, I'm going to go into the locksmith business today. I'm going to get my brother licensed as a locksmith, and then we're going to go into business together.
So you have 2 locksmiths now?
We started off with 2. Our territory, which includes in Tennessee, is Hamilton and Bradley counties. And then I also include North Georgia, which is Walker, Catoosa, and Whitfield counties.
Well, you make a great point, Steve Ruggiero, about regulation. Regulation is favored by those who have gone through the process, and you have, and that keeps out competition. Well, just briefly, though, talk about the process. What was the fee to be a licensed locksmith business, Flying Locksmith here in Chattanooga? What was involved with that, and how long did it take?
All right. Yeah, it took us about 3 months to go through the process, which was actually pretty quick once we found our qualifier and that sort of thing. We carry, your insurance, of course, is going to be, depending on how many vehicles you have and how many.
You mean workers' comp?
Workers' compensation, which your limits of liability are. Some of our customers include Walmart, Starbucks, Bank of America. So in that situation, we're carrying $5 million general liability policies, and most businesses typically carry $1 million.
Now, your job is you're not a locksmith. You have the official two men on your staff. You hope to have maybe with more business 5 or 6 in
we're hoping to grow. Yeah, we're hoping to grow this territory to 6 full-time vans on the road.
Well, that's very, very ambitious, and you'll be putting and installing locks like the one I'm holding here for our viewer on YouTube. My name is David Tulis. We're on YouTube Live. It's Hot News Talk Radio. Our show is live every day. If you have a shut-in friend of yours, an old person maybe from your retired from your business, have that person follow me on YouTube. We're real people. We're here. We're standing with a gentleman with an orange sweater. And his name is Steve Ruggiero, and he's a locksmith. And I'm holding up for you are watching us on our show. A very heavy lock that's about $600 worth is equipment, probably another $75 or so to install it. Very heavy, solid system with buttons to get in, and there are many others that are available in our high-tech society. Well, so your job, Steve, is not to do the actual lock work. You are the manager. You are the director. And that's how you can run a lock business, though you were once in insurance.
Exactly.
That was financial sector.
That was a little tough for me to give up, where I was the subject matter expert and I was the go-to guy for everything. And now, I'm handling more behind the scenes sort of stuff, scheduling, ordering of the products, doing the invoicing, purchase orders, all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit of a shift, but we're really enjoying it.
You're not working with a toolbox, a $2,000 toolbox of fine devices, physical. But you are dealing with abstract things. When you were in insurance, you dealt with 401ks, Roth IRAs, annuities. So here the paperwork is just different, but it is paperwork, and it is dealing with the public.
Yeah, and taking care of people is the bottom line. We're securing their property and their family, and making sure that people that shouldn't be in places they shouldn't be don't get in.
Exactly. Well, tell my listener how to make contact with you and how to find out more about Flying Locksmith.
Sure, you can find us at www.flyinglocksmiths.com, and then we have our 24/7 call center serviced at area code 423-424-5600. 4590, and that is 24/7 service for both residents and commercial customers.
This is David Tulis. Steve Ruggiero, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, David.
We are here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, brought to you by Ducks, the Indoor Professionals, formerly known as Duck Busters. This outfit will clean the ductwork under your business or house. And no, it will not restore your aftermarket AK-47 Lego pieces that your son dropped down the vent. That is gone. But the dust and the mites and the dead carcasses of small rodents are gone too. The number is 876-9907.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
MLS 2239. What would you do with all that cash? Listen up, y'all. Ben Phillips here, Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. $1,200. That's how much we just put back in a Saudi Daisy family's pocket per month. All they did was pick up the phone. 805-9100. That's 805-9100. Get that quick quote now. 805-9100. HomeRateMortgage.com. MLS 2239. Do you want to achieve the American dream in 2016? Listen up, y'all. I'm Ben Phillips with Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. We just helped a police officer purchase his first home in East Brainerd. Now he's grilling and chilling on his back deck. The American dream. You could achieve it with no money down options. Why wouldn't you call? 805-9100, HomeRateMortgage.com.
In the middle of our street. Hi, I'm Sabrina with Sabrina Realty Associates. Now is a great time to sell your home. In our area, inventory is at an all-time low, which translates into higher sales prices. Call us today at 423-499-7780 to set up a free consultation and discuss our unique and aggressive marketing programs. We will provide you with a free market analysis to determine the right value of your home. Call us today at 423-499-7780 or visit our website at sabrinarealty.com. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house.
Need more of your tax money back faster? EJPelton.com. Save time and money now. EJPelton.com. You wouldn't want to go to a dance by yourself, so why dance with the IRS alone? EJPelton.com. Get more of your money back faster now. EJPelton.com. For you and your business. EJ Pelton Tax Resolution and E-Filing Services. You earned it. Now keep more of your money. EJPelton.com. Offices in Brainerd and Saudi. EJPelton.com.
Yeah, I'm the tax man.
He's a U.S. military veteran, 27 years of assessment experience, and a proven conservative record.
Sterling Jeton is the only candidate equipped to run the Assessor Properties Office.
You have trusted us to serve. We trust Sterling Jeton to continue serving you with integrity and a commitment to conservative principles.
I'm Claude Ramsey.
And I'm Bill Bennett.
And I'm Sterling Jeton, and I'm asking for your vote on the March 1st Republican ballot.
Paid for by friends to elect Sterling Jeton. Ham McAllister, Treasurer.
Are you prepared for severe weather? February 28th through March 5th is Severe Weather Awareness Week in Tennessee. Do you have a severe weather plan? Do you know how to protect yourself from tornadoes? And most importantly, do you have a weather alert radio? Come to P5 Preparedness and let us help you get ready for severe weather or any other emergency. P5 Preparedness is located on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. Look for the Green Army truck. Call us at 423-602-2175. You need to get prepared today. Don't wait until it's too late. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Get the skills and supplies you need or die waiting for help. P5preparedness.com.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Tornadoes rip across parts of the East Coast. Fox TV affiliate WGTG's Annie Yu is in Waverly, Virginia.
Virginia governor declared that state of emergency to speed up the disaster aid here, and it's going to be quite some time before they can get this cleaned up.
4 people killed in the state, including a 2-year-old. In South Carolina, a man died after a tree fell on him. 3 pregnant women testing positive for the Zika virus in Florida.
Health officials say the cases appear to be travel-related. 32 cases have been reported in Florida, with Miami-Dade County leading the state.
Fox Radio's Tanya J. Powers. A suburban Detroit firefighter paying off a struggling family's electricity bill of more than $1,000 after responding to a call at their home. Ryan McEwen saying he was glad to do it, wasn't seeking recognition, but he hopes it inspires others to take similar action. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. The man being sought after in a rape case in Nashville was arrested on Wednesday afternoon in Chattanooga following an extensive high-speed freeway chase down I-75, which ended in multiple wrecks at the East Brainerd Road exit. One Tennessee Highway Patrol officer was injured in that wreck with minor injuries. Charged was 20-year-old Cardarius DeMonte Caldwell, who police say sexually assaulted a woman from Rutherford County whom he met on Facebook. Police say he held a gun to her at her house on Cherry Street while assaulting her. They also say he stole a car from a gas station and sped off before he was stopped at the East Brainerd Road exit many miles later. Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies say that there was a shooting that happened on Highwater Road in Soddy Daisy. When deputies got there, they did find one person with a gunshot wound. The deputies are still investigating further. The scene is secure as of now. To keep a leg up on the weather, make sure you get the Bloom Sky app for your smartphone. Search for Chattanooga, and you'll get the live view from us here at Hot News Talk Radio. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on at Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
As a somewhat vain person, I used to describe people who were not for the marketplace as statists. And I said, well, I know what a statist is, and I'm going to throw that word at my listener as I talk about the good people in Washington and the good people in Nashville who are trying to run our lives and secure us from all danger, and yet who I want to suggest are really the cause of the great wave of danger that is ahead. We face a national disaster. We face a great decompression. Perhaps we could call it a catharsis, in which we suddenly see something that we hadn't seen before. And what would a catharsis be? What would be a way of comparing to what could I compare that? Well, it's two things. One would be like an epiphany, when you suddenly see something like the Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. The artist has his epiphany, right? The idea of an epiphany is something that comes from Roman Catholicism, among other places, and that novelist. And the epiphany is when you see something that you didn't see before, and somehow circumstances and the state of your soul, and I would say God's providence, make you aware of something. And another would be perhaps making love to your wife. That might be another way of describing it, where you see something that you hadn't seen before, right? And that is always a renewing of your relationship with her, and it's very intimate, very personal, and extremely gratifying. You see something that you didn't see before, because only an hour before you were complaining about something, right? And you were ignoring her, and you weren't paying attention to her. You weren't being very attentive. You weren't being very graceful. But then now you see how you were wrong, right? You were wrong. And here you are with your wife, and there's an epiphany. There's an epiphany in the relationship, renewed every time, and cleansed every time in your dealings with your beloved, sweet wife who bore your children, right? And who is still interesting. She's not a bore. She is an interesting woman, and you need to encourage her to read and take time to refresh herself intellectually and spiritually as well. And so the idea of the statist is that he favors the state, and so what I've done more recently is just not use that word, because I don't want to sound as though I'm condemning somebody, right? I don't want to sound like I'm condemning someone as being a statolatrist, right? Someone who's worshiping the state as God, as Marx and Hegel did and Engels did in their theories about the new man and the new community and all those things that make up sort of old style collectivism, which still has many adherents at UTC and even I dare say at Chat State and maybe at Lee, maybe even a bit here and there at Bryan College in Dayton. The champions of socialism will call themselves progressives. Indeed. And so that's the term I use. But they recommend a system, Ludwig von Mises so wisely says, which is characterized by rigid observance of routine and by a resistance to every kind of improvement. They call themselves liberals, but they are intent upon abolishing liberty. They call themselves Democrats, but they yearn for a dictatorship. They call themselves revolutionaries, but they want to make the government omnipotent. Isn't that wonderful? The book is Bureaucracy. It came out in 1942, I think it was. I've got a copy. I've read it here and there, parts over and over again with great delight. They promise the blessings of the Garden of Eden, he says, but they plan to transform the world into a gigantic post office. Every man but one, a subordinate clerk in a bureau, right? Everybody is hired by the government to run the bureau and to bring increasing efficiencies, increasing order into the world. What about privatization, though? What is the progressive theory on privatization of the imprisonment industry? Well, the prison industry is a gigantic one. It is fed by the court industry, all connected with the state, of course. And we are concerned. I'm concerned about Hamilton County giving its authority, its legal authority to a corporation and investors, right? Investors in their corporations, such as Correctional Corporation of America, which is publicly traded, and two others that are going to be in a lengthy, complicated bidding process that will be overseen by County Mayor Jim Coppinger. And Gail Ruppo tells TV9, we'll make an evaluation of whether they're qualified to proceed, and then there's a lot of work between now and contract award date, which would be in September. And the sheriff says has the final say, according to Mayor Coppinger. Well, I think that we need to hope for reform. We need to hope for a wave of indignation at the whole idea of imprisoning people for paperwork offenses that come mostly against the common people. The common people are the ones you find in courts, and they are the ones who fill the dockets and the jails and the prison. The court system, the industrial court system, the industrial legal system, the industrial imprisonment system, all are about making a living for people who are, in fact, investors. They're investors in owning shares of CCA or owning privately held shares in other prison industries that make a profit. And they are part of the skimming economy. They're part of the end game of the national economy, the debt, state-based, progressive economy that has oppressed us in Chattanooga and Hamilton County for decades. For absolutely decades, we have been under a great oppression. And you say, well, I've not noticed that. I'm fine, and I don't know anybody in my business. I don't know anybody at the country club where I play golf who says that. Why do you say that? How come nobody's noticed these things if they are so bad? Well, we are used to them. We are very used to them. And the costs and impositions that we count as normal should be viewed by every sensate soul with repugnance. Every person with a brain should review with repugnance. Because we could be here in Hamilton County and Chattanooga with a population of past 1 million. We could have more than 1 million people here. We have about 300,000 in the county now. We could have a quadruple population. We could have a quadruple annual income if we had less progressivism and less intervention by the state. And if we have the county engaging in contract these corporations, well, what we have built-in lobbies for continuing criminalization of innocent activities, more victimless crimes, more grinding against the poor people who can't afford licenses and fees, and they just can't afford. They just can't afford to make bond. Right? It's $2,000, and they can't afford the 10% on that. How is that? And so you have people who are in jail for weeks and weeks and months because they can't make bond. And all for legitimate crimes, right, for which they're hounded by the police, prosecuted by the district attorney's office, all legally, right? It's all legal. And there they sit. Their wives have to get jobs. The children, the black families, the children are neglected. They're thrown into public school. The wife has to have her grandmother take care of the children until she gets back from work. You have mayhem. You have social mayhem brought about by this system. I think we need to not have. If the county is going to have prisons and jail, not prisons, but if the county is going to run jails that hold people up to a year, it needs to take the onus on itself and not have a business interest skimming the profit from it and finding profit in everything. Imprisoning people is not a profitable thing. It is profitable, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because it is the idea of imprisonment, I'd say, is a moral wrong. There's more moral wrong with imprisonment than with slavery. Slavery is not morally evil, but imprisonment is morally evil, because, and I say that because the scriptures don't view prisons. There is no prison in the Word of God. It just doesn't exist. There are two remedies for crime. One is restitution, and the other is death. There's no prison where you have the state, the magistrate, enlarging his interest by running these businesses, the prison business, and feeding all of his friends, feeding all of his corporate buddies, all the people who play golf with him, with contracts and food services and locksmith services and all the other things that go into making a prison run or a jail run. Imprisonment is evil because it forestalls restoration and restitution, and of course, hardly anyone is put to death for capital offenses. And then the problem is also you have a warping of what justice is. How is it that a man who is driving on a suspended license deserves to be in jail for months until his trial? How is that just? It's not. There's no crime, right? I'd say there's no crime, even though statutorily there may be. There's no sin involved in that. It's just an offense. It's an offense against people, an offense against custom. It's not an evil. There's no actual evil in that. And I would say my argument on that goes into some detail on other points, and I won't bring them up here, because I believe that you have a right to travel, even though I'm a licensee of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security for traveling. I don't travel. I drive a motor vehicle, or I operate a motor vehicle. That's something done in commerce. And so you have many people who trip up on that commercial relationship with the state, and they become criminals. And this is a grave problem. And I think we need to pray. I would say that the Christian people, my listener, I know you don't go to church, but people who do. They need to pray for reformation, and they need to pray that God's people like themselves, would take an interest in law, take an interest in the injustice of courts per se, and have whoever runs the criminal court campaign, whoever wins that campaign, have very few cases that he has to deal with. He has to deal with thievery, fraud. He has to deal with misrepresentation, things like that, and abuses, assaults and batteries, and then murders and rapes. Those are common law crimes, should be prosecuted as common law crimes. Well, I was gonna before my time gets away from me, I wanted to hold on. I think I have a caller. This is David Tulis. You've called our line. It's 800-8949. What is on your mind? You're live on the air.
Great discussion. I wanted to know what you actually think is a crime and isn't a crime, and the purpose of turning non-crimes into crime. What is the primary function of that?
Okay. How are things turned into crimes? And the question is, what's my take on how things are turned into crimes? Well, they're turned into crimes when the state becomes merchant. The great problem with the loss of liberty, the great problem with the increase of the number of crimes, is the state becoming a merchant. The state going into business and competing against many, many other businesses. It operates what we call inequity. It operates sort of under contract. So, for example, we have many motorists who are criminals because they violate an agreement with the state. They enter into an agreement with the state to be licensees, and then somehow they violate the agreements, the terms of the agreement, which are the statute, and they don't have the proper form. They haven't renewed their license. They're driving on suspended and expired. They have a traffic infraction. They're charged with speeding. They're charged with DUI, abusing the privilege of operating a motor vehicle in commerce. And these things become crimes, and they become equal in the eyes of the state to murder, right? Murder or robbery or rape or a death threat. Those are all viewed as bad, but just as bad in the state's eyes are offenses against itself, which are simply paperwork offenses. The state should have I would think reform in Tennessee, if it ever comes in God's providence, will scale back the kinds of offenses that the state is willing to prosecute. And that would be, in the end, a reduction of the criminality in the state. You define crime as something different. You define crime more biblically and less as an administrative, misstep, which is what many crimes are today, are just administrative missteps, and people who can't afford to buy the license. So people who carry guns without the license are often very poor. They have their cheap 25 caliber Raven handgun kept for self-defense, but they don't have a permit, which is you have to take $120 or so for the permit. You have to take the class, which is a day long. That's about $100. They may not have a day. They may not have $200, and so these men carry these weapons on their own, or these women, right, living in the projects, right, in the government slum, carry these weapons on their own for personal defense, and so that is a crime, though, if they're caught. That is going with the intent, carrying a weapon with the intent to go armed, is the statute written against black people, by the way. And you can find out more about that at Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. It goes into the deep details of the operations of the modern state. And we need to have fewer crimes and fewer things that are called crimes, because what happens is the state says, we are offended that you didn't pay our fee and get our permit and so on. We're offended. But as if we were God. Now, God is offended by, when you rape a woman, you offend God first, and then you offend her and her family. And the state says, well, you offend me in the same way that God is offended by rape. We are offended by you're not keeping up with your paperwork, or not having the proper form filled out, or making some kind of statement on a form, which is constructive fraud or what have you, and we're going to prosecute you for that, or sue you criminally in our agency, right? Or not sue you civilly in our agency, or sue you criminally, or prosecute you criminally. Now, the question I wanted to get to, though, is on the question of motivation, and the whole question of shall teachers buy learning from their students? It's a good question, because I have 4 children, and we've often wondered about this question in my house. My mother, who's Swiss, when I was a boy, paid me to learn French. Okay, she gave me a stipend to learn French. I think earlier I got paid a Coca-Cola once a Saturday. I got a Coke if I did my lessons, and that there's a question there that my wife Jeanette and I have often talked about, and it comes down to the question of the value of the lesson being given, whether in a school or vis-a-vis a mentor, or a lesson, a workplace lesson of some kind, or in a tutorial situation. And it's the question of intrinsic versus extrinsic value. I think it's a terrific concept, which I hadn't really thought about, because it touches on local economy. And our show is about local economy, and and it works. How is that a question here in local economy? Well, we have national economy in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and it's not an intrinsic value. National economy is an extrinsic value. And by that, I mean this: all borrowing creates an extrinsic value. Much of what we have in the way of new development in town is extrinsic, has an extrinsic value. It comes from outside. It comes from the national money system, the credit creation system. That accounts for these new retail establishments on our engorged retail sector, right? Our engorged housing sector in Chattanooga. That's all come by borrowing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars already borrowed into existence to buy these amenities. The value is not intrinsic, it's extrinsic. It comes from without, and the external interest creates the value here, right? And we see this nice tire changing center, for example, or some other business, and we think, wow, we're becoming a rich town here. We got this great brand new business here, in Chattanooga. But in contrast, local economy would say, don't borrow, but invest and save. So what you're doing is you're withdrawing from certain parts of the marketplace which are not really valuable and which are a part of your expense column on your ledger, right? They're part of their expenses. They're not gained. They don't create value for you. They take value from you. And investing, I would say, especially local investing, when you divest national and invest local, investing would tend to be more intrinsic because the value comes from within, right? It comes from within, not artificially applied upon that operation from without, which is what the credit sector does to these businesses that we have in Chattanooga. Well, what about in school and in lessons? Again, I asked the question because I'm trying to be an authentic man. David Tulis is your host here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with Russell Stroud, the news director. We have, just by the way, we've got intrinsic value in Duke Nukem coming at the Patriot Prepper Hour just after me. Duke is going to be talking about our poor economy and setting priorities in defending your assets and kind of giving yourself some wherewithal in case disaster strikes. The disaster ahead, I think, is economic. It is financial. It comes from the financialized sector of the American economy. David Stockman, in his magnificent Mammoth History, which I've recently finished, says that nearly 25% of the national economy is financialized. In other words, it's not real value. It's kind of a casino gambling operation based in large measure on the gyrating values of paper money schemes, right? Fiat money schemes. In schooling, do we want to give stickers to reward our students? And the answer is no. And the answer is no because we believe in local economy and we believe in the intrinsic value of what is being taught. Intrinsic value, according to the Esprit newsletter, which I just finished editing and which has gone to press this morning, is doing something because intrinsic value is doing something because of the satisfaction, delight, or natural consequences of doing so. Extrinsic motivation would be different, doing something because of imposed rewards, that is, not natural consequences that you will receive for doing so. And I've always been someone to want to be authentic, right? To be myself, an authentic person, not fearing opinion, not cowering, not being afraid of people. And maybe even though I'm a very mild-mannered person, formerly with newsprint ink stains on his fingertips as a newspaper editor, maybe I am somehow finding my way with you, my listener, as your host, and the man who runs your commercials for your business, right? I'm the man who helps you prosper, right? do contact me about that, by the way. But in schools, in education, there is how is it that a boy reads his lessons and maybe his French or his math lessons, gets the answers mostly right, and then reads his William Butler Yeats poetry, right? Reading that very difficult poem or the Longfellow poem, or learning it, and then he gets a sticker, right? Or he gets a candy bar for his reward. How can you give a physical reward when it really is poetical? When the reward is the thing itself. Such reward systems teach children to be little mercenaries looking out to see if they'll get their credit. And as Jesus said, such systems have already received their reward. And there the Lord is talking about the almsgiver who gives it noisily and publicly, like Kerry Brown promised to do with his billions and billions coming through the credit, the system of credit and gambling that he was launching here in Chattanooga. He had his reward. These systems, harmless though they might seem, train children to do good in order to be seen by men. They learn to do good in order to get something for themselves rather than because it is right. And this is just a couple of sentences from the Esprit newsletter, of which I'm the mild-mannered editor as well. These systems are totally modern, coming in with industrialization when popular secularized psychology began teaching that people are best treated as cogs in the machine rather than as eternal souls. I know that is a harsh and extreme statement, but rewarding virtue with cash, marbles, sticks, tickets, or other superficial prizes is treating a child as if he were a hamster rather than a soul made in the divine image. This is a quote from a writer, and her name is Misty Misty Winkler, and she writes a blog, simplyconvivial.com. That's simplyconvivial.com. And I'll be probably reposting some of this material at Nooganomics.com. Our goal is to train our children for life as mature adults and for eternity. Then, if that's our goal, then our methods and not just the short-term results matter. Let us not choose methods that fulfill only the goal of outward conformity, but, she says, be willing to put in time, effort, and thought required to help our children do the right thing for the right reason. What is intrinsic motivation? She says, motivating without stickers. And there's more to this, of course, but I leave that with you because I think it's helpful. We want to reward our children with the thing itself, not with something external. So if there's a lesson to be learned or a work to be done, the satisfaction with the yard work being completed and standing there leaning on the shovel, looking over the overturned earth and the work done, that is a reward. That is a genuine reward. You don't have to go down to your office, pull out your billfold, and give your son a $20 bill. He might deserve that $20 bill for other reasons, but for this, there is an internal satisfaction that will last more than just a few minutes. This is David Tulis. Check out Nooganomics.com.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy, breezy, and colder start to your Thursday. We'll see a few sprinkles and mountain flurries for a little while. Highs only to the lower to middle 40s. Tonight, some lingering clouds, lows 30 to 32. Friday, more sunshine returns. A nicer day, highs near 50. Warmer with more sunshine for the weekend. Ocuvite is a vitamin made just for your eyes from the eye care experts at Bosch & Lomb. With